Welcome everybody. It's going to be our first Brocast Breakdown. That's what I'm going to title it here. Basically, I'm going to try to give you guys some in-depth analysis. This is actually just a public game, and I think these truly will give you the most opportunities to see, gameplay that will, show, I guess, room for improvement. When we watch those other professional games, they don't make too many, decisions that, of course, are poor, whereas in these public games, maybe things are more questionable, and I can really slow down and just, instead of focusing on trying to catch all the action and everything, I can more just focus on the gameplay itself, and try to give you just a little insight of maybe how to improve your game. So anyways, like I said, this is our first one, and this is going to be just a public game. It appears that they're deciding to run here on the Radiant. Tiny with the Dragon Knight, so that's a nice stun combination. And then, of course, and that's going to be versus that Spectre Ancient Apparition. And then they're going to be up against, and there's a Viper and Broodmother middle. That should be interesting. Of course, I'll get back to that. And then finally, Warlock paired up with Anti-Mage in the bottom against that Kunkka and Shadow Shaman. So, essentially, of course, when you're picking these teams, and of course, like in a public game, maybe it doesn't happen as much. People just more choose who they want to play and kind of go from there. But honestly, you try to get at least one hard carry that'll do well in the late game. Your middle laner, you can either counter pick after you see who they go, but basically you want someone that's going to be able to make good use of that farm they get, and as well as levels, because of course you're solo in middle, all the time in public games, and you'll get that level 6 really quick. Take advantage of runes, possibly gank. And Viper and Broodmother are perfect middle heroes. But yeah, because I'll get back to that. And then, of course, when you think of the long lane, generally you want to select a pair of heroes that, first of all, have good lane control, good lane presence. Dragon Knight Pebbles is kind of interesting, or Tiny, sorry. It's kind of an interesting combination just because they do have a double stun combination, which can potentially do a lot of damage. They can lock someone down. Actually, it looks like Anti-Mage is taking advantage of these over-aggressive people down here. And, Warlock, he's an interesting character. He's really strong, I believe, in kind of these learning phases, early phases of the game with his Shadow Word. Fatal Bonds, it's interesting. It does, make multiple people take that damage. Share damage rather, and when you pair that up with against the enemies, like if you can get it on both enemy heroes and maybe some creeps, they're really going to take a lot of damage, and especially with an Anti-Mage who already is level 4. I mean, that's just going to play such a huge role. You can see him just dishing out so much damage already. But anyways, let me get back to what I was talking about earlier. So you're going to put your hard carry and some kind of decent support. In this case, it's going to be Ancient Apparition, who's a phenomenal support hero. He has a slow and eventually that stun. Normally, he does work better with someone else that can CC well, stunners especially, because that Cold Feet does take a while to stun someone. I believe it's around 3 or 4 seconds, but at that point, it's a really long stun. As you're going to see, this guy can just walk right out of it. Actually, he does get frozen. I guess he's just in range of it. But I don't really prefer this Dragon Knight Tiny lane, and just the reason I say that again is that there's no range in the lane. I mean, they do have AoE nukes, but they can't really contend with Spectre's creep farming. Because as soon as they get in melee range, they're just going to get beat down. And, it's just not going to work out for them. I mean, they are tanky in that sense. It's not like a squishy agility with strength or anything. They are both very high health. And, of course, Dragon Knight, all he really is good for is tanking. And then eventually, I guess, leveling up that Breathe Fire to do some nice AoE damage. But ultimately, I think Spectre's going to benefit a lot from this lane if Ancient Apparition can do a lot of creep pulling. So I'll get into that now. As you can see here, there is no wards blocking this creep spawn, from, I guess, spawning. That's the word to use. Generally, what you want to do if you are a support player in this short lane is before you pull for your lane, you want to try to get to at least double stacked. What I mean by this, and I think Ancient Apparition is probably going to do it, but No, actually, it appears he's just going to keep a single stack and pull. But the reason you want to double stack it is because this creep wave will take out this spawn. And especially if the Apparition keeps auto-attacking, it's going to be taken out relatively quickly. However, if it's a double pull, it'll actually kill the creep wave, and you'll be able to kill a couple of the creeps with it. So you'll still get experience and gold, and in addition to that, your creep wave will be dead, so now there's nothing really fighting here, and it's essentially more lane control overall. And I'm not sure about bottom. They might be doing it as well. That would be, I guess, preferable. Viper actually looking for a gank. This is really smart play here. You know, his level 6 Viper Strike, you're going to see him go here on Shadow Shaman and drop it. There it is. You know, really powerful ganking tool. Really high slow. And it does, of course, a ton of damage early on. You know, I believe it's, what is that, 60 damage over time for 5 seconds. So you do the math there, 300 damage or whatever, and it's just gonna annihilate someone for a gank. So heroes like him, Pudge, of course. Pudge, one of probably the strongest, especially in public games, for setting up those ganks with his hooks and whatnot. But Broodmother, see, this is the problem with you know, setting up these ganks, especially in a hero like Viper. He can't do much about a Broodmother pushing. You know, Broodmother, she's going to just sit in her webs all day, and I mean, if you're willing to spend the money, you can get a ward, you know, a vision ward, or sentry ward rather, and see her and keep her out of those webs. But still, at the end of the day, she's, you know, going to keep pushing that lane just because spawn spiderlings is just so powerful. You know, as you're seeing here, she uses it to last hit the minions, and at that point, you know, when these spiders, they put up a dot on a target, and if that target dies while they have that debuff on them, they also become a spiderling. And I believe there's a maximum amount, but the point is, she can command this huge army of spiderlings and just take out a tower with, you know, with little the other person can do. Of course, if the other middle does have like a nice AoE move, especially one that's like mana efficient, that's of course why I'm looking forward to a hero called Magnetar. That's coming in the future, I think. But anyways, any hero that basically has some kind of AoE presence that they can use often. Windrunner is the first hero that comes to my mind. She has Power Shot. You know, of course she's an intellect hero, so she can use that quite often, and that will almost one-shot a lot of her spiderlings. If she gets 2 of those off, it essentially will kill all of them. So she's really good to counter these kind of pushes. Viper, on the other hand, like I said, not so much. So, you know, he's probably gonna have fine time. He's gonna be able to farm, but he, you know, if Broodmother plays this right, she'll be able to take this tower down with, you know, little challenge. So, anyways, going back here, as you can see, Apparition now doing what I was talking about here, or at least trying to. Here she failed there. But yeah, like I was saying, in order to do that, basically you see this little rock formation here. When it's around about 7 seconds before the next minute. So let's say at 8:53. That's when you'll run into the creep spawns or attack them and just start running. Just, you know, head for the hills and get as far away from there as possible. So essentially, when it turns 9 o'clock, or at 9 minutes, I guess, that's when the creeps will then respawn if there's nothing in that camp, in that vicinity. And then that will be double stacked because the creeps will run back, and then you'll have 2 sets of creeps, which will be really useful, of course, to pull, and like I was talking about earlier, do a really good job with lane control. As you see again, Viper was setting up a gank. They get a gank 6-0 now, actually. So they're getting themselves a decent advantage here. Maybe a little too aggressive, but in the meantime, and here's exactly what I was talking about, Broodmother taking unnecessary damage, but she's already putting pressure on that tier 2 tower. And she doesn't have very much. I mean, she does have the power treads, actually, in the Ring of Basilisk. So she has the mana regen. It's going to be interesting to see how she decides to build this game. There's a couple different paths that are very common with Broodmother. The first one, of course, being a really fast Black King bar. And, of course, when I say that, the reason is her ultimate just adds 60 bonus damage at rank 1 and 40% lifesteal for 14 seconds. And then you couple that with her slow. She has a passive slow, which gets a lot stronger, of course, as she levels it up. But if she can just stay on a target, whoever she wants, and just do her tons of extra bonus damage and lifesteal, so of course she doesn't have to worry about taking damage. She can pick off whoever she wants with that blacking bar. So that's why it's a very common rushed item on her. The other one being Organ Malevolence, which, when you first think about that, which Organ Malevolence is, it takes 3 of the quarterstaff items here. I'm going to find it for you all so you know what I'm talking about. Organ Malevolence, it requires 3 Oblivion Staffs, and the end result is active Soul Burn. So basically, you're going to use the item, click it, and you're going to cast it on an enemy hero, and it's going to silence them for 5 seconds and make them take 25% more damage. In addition to that, of course, it gives 20 intelligence, 30 attack speed, 45 damage, and a lot of mana regen. So that's kind of why it just goes so well for that Broodmother hero, because she'll get the extra intelligence. She'll be able to have that mana pool, and in addition with the mana regen, of course, to just spam that spawn spiralings. Just keep casting it, keep last hitting with it, and get these huge army of spiralings that you can just push the enemy towers down with. And at the end of the day, that's kind of her ultimate purpose. She's going to get really farmed really fast and just keep pushing. A term I want to use here that may be a little unfamiliar is called split pushing. Essentially, what that entails is, in one lane, you'll have your Broodmother, or someone that is capable of pushing really hard. A Broodmother, of course, is one of the best examples of it. And then in another lane, you have the rest of your heroes. So like 4 people pushing a different lane. And so what the other team has to do is make a choice. Because generally, one hero cannot defend against a Broodmother one-on-one. They'll generally take at least 2 or 3. Just because of how strong she is with that ultimate, and just how big that army can get of Spiralings. So they really do have to make a choice, and at the end of the day, you're probably going to come out on top, taking either one tower or the other, or just getting what you want out of that. So split pushing is a very good and common strategy when you have a champion such as Broodmother who can just dominate the pushing scene. Okay, so I focus a lot of attention on her. She'll probably go at Blacking Bar. We'll see. Actually, yes, she picks up Mithril Hammer, so that's going to be her most likely her option there. Let's pull up the creep scores really quick and see how our hard carries are farming. It looks like Anti-Mage is up to 50 in 1 and 9, compared to a 44 and 5 Spectre. So they're relatively close. The main difference, of course, is the 3-0 and 4 Anti-Mage. And only a 1-0 no Spectre. And he also has that 3 levels because of that. And that's going to make a huge difference. You figure each kill's around 200, 300 gold. That's going to give him a lot more money. And he's probably, looks like he went early Vanguard, which I'm assuming Spectre did the same thing. Yes, that's, of course, very common on Spectre as well. Anti-Mage doesn't necessarily have to go Vanguard. Some people stereotype saying, oh, all hard carries need to go Vanguard first. And that way they can survive in early team fights. But to be honest, if your team is just engaging in team fights and they don't need you, and all you need to do is just keep farming, then it's not necessary to get every time. So, it's not good to make stereotypes of every hero has to build this way every game. You should build items based on the situation you're playing in. So let's just say, for example, this Anti-Mage had absolute lane control. Like, there were really good stacks, really good pulls, and he could just sit here all game and farm. But maybe he wouldn't rush Vanguard. Maybe he would just rush for Battle Fury, which gives that nice cleave damage. He can farm even better, do tons of damage, and have that health and mana regen, really good sustain. That's another common item on him. It looks like he's probably going to go get a Yasha with this Blade of Liquidity. and turn that into our good friend Mr. Mantis style. Yes, that is the item I was referring to. You'll have to pardon me, I'm just a little bit rusty with terms as I've been switching around games. But yeah, Mantis style, very good, very strong item on Anti-Mage. Of course, when he has a passive that burns 64 mana on hit, and he already has, of course, a very good attack speed. As you can see, it takes 0.73 seconds to attack. So, he's attacking incredibly fast, burning a ton of mana, and when you create those illusions, each of them also gain that mana burning ability. So if you can just stay on a target for just a few seconds even, you're already going to burn, hundreds of mana. And against like a Brood Mother, who of course is incredibly mana dependent, Spectre not as much, of course. Spectre, kind of a different situation. I'll get into his builds in just a second. But like I was saying, Anti-Mage is going to just, and you're going to see him already, just dishing out a good amount of damage. But here's what I'm talking about in regards to Warlock. He starts really strong. His ultimate, of course, throughout the game, no doubt, one of the nicest, best initiating moves in the game. He calls that Golem down, and it does an AoE stun and damage, of course. And then, that Golem has an immolation effect, which just does the constant burning damage, and he does pretty strong melee damage as well. So, a really good team presence, I guess. And if you couple that with the Fatal Bonds, which will link up a bunch of heroes and make them take a lot of damage together, then I guess you can have a decent presence. But of course, his upheaval, it's kind of a decent controversy. It's up in the air. It is a powerful slow. It can go up to 84%, and it's an AoE, so it can affect multiple people. But he has to channel it. So essentially, instead of attacking, casting other spells, moving around, he just has to channel this slow in a not huge, it's pretty big, but not an enormous area. So it's kind of thought of sometimes just a waste of time. He could be doing other things with that time instead. Whereas, let's compare it to Shadow Shaman. He has a channel as well with that shackle, but at least he's keeping that person stunned. You can't move, they can't do anything, and they're taking damage. So, I don't know. It's like I said, it's debatable. I definitely wouldn't advise maxing it, first or second or any third or even. I definitely would leave that probably for last. But, so I'm not going to sit here and say it's a terrible move, because it's not. But it's, it's not as strong as his other moves, I guess I would put it. Alright, so let's go over to these heroes. Kind of haven't really touched much except for Brood Mother. So I'll try to go down the list here. Shadow Shaman was kind of playing a more of a support role. You'll sometimes see him in middle as well, to get those wards up, get those levels. But not in this case. I guess he's more going for support, like I said. And while I do think Ether Shock is his strongest move, of course, the more you level it up, it can hit more targets and do a lot more damage. But at the same time, depending on, I guess, like I said, what you need for your team, they need the CC. They're up against this Anti-Mage who can just blink around all day. Tiny can just run amok. All these heroes can be really a nuisance, and if you don't have the CC to deal with them, they're just going to mess you up. Plain and simple. A Dragon Knight getting in your face, has this Dragon Tail, with that really long stun, 3 second stun, now 3.25 because he just put a point into it. So I think personally this game I would have rather seen him go for at least trying to max it or put more points into his Hex ability. That way you can keep someone CC'd a lot longer. I understand not maxing out Shackle in this case, just because look at the CC ups against. He's up against this Dragon Knight and Tiny. tons of stun right there. A Warlock ulti can interrupt that as well. And then Anti-Mage's ulti has a mini stun associated with it. So basically all the heroes except for Viper have some kind of interrupt ability. Anyways, so he's just been buying wards. He's doing a good job there in that sense. I can't stress enough how important it is for support to keep buying wards throughout the game. You know, regardless of what point it is, even if, let's say, you have a huge advantage, you could even capitalize on it more. Just, you know, keep buying those wards. And counter warding, that kind of comes as with experience, you know, where you think you need to place those. I'll just give you a quick rundown of the most common places. As you can see here, this is probably one of the most common spots, along with either this ledge, or this ledge. So those are the two most common spots you'll find wards. And so if you want to begin counter warding, those are a great place to lay, you know, some kind of sentry ward, either there, here, or even here. I usually will put it in this spot here because you can get both up on this ledge or this ledge. And generally you will find one a lot of the time. In this case, I mean, I'm looking around for wards. There's only 2 in these common spots. There's none up for the Radiant, which is probably why I guess they feel like they don't need them necessarily, but you know, I think they could really use some benefit from, you know, trying to put one here. This is a great spot for a ward. I just want to throw it out there. It has a huge vision range, almost all the way to the tower, down this hill, you know, around these stairs. It has so much vision, and it's great when you've already pushed this tier 1 tower and you're trying to go for this next one, or you're just trying to harass their jungle. You know, that's, you know, when you're pushing them that badly, you just want to punish them for it. You want to keep capitalizing on it instead of playing passively, because you are in the driver's seat. You know, you want to take control of the game at that point. And by having a ward here, you're going to see them entering their jungle. You're going to know relatively, you know, where they are, and you can set up ganks a lot easier. You can put one around here. It's not as great, but, you know, this is a very common path for heroes to walk through. And then, of course, same on this side. This is another common path. It's a little more annoying to put a ward. This is the great spot. I did some air quotations there. This is the good spot for their jungle, the Radiance jungle. You're going to see them, you know, jungling here, come in that spawn. You know, they obviously, you'll be able to see them come up the stairs, come around this back path. But, you know, when I'm talking about jungle, this is definitely the better spot up here, just because of all the avenues they can take and, you know, how much you can see. So there's your little mini guide there. At this point in the game, you saw they're getting kind of fed up. Anti-Mage, he has had such a strong start. I mean, 7-0-7 with 115 CS. It's going to be pretty hard to stop him at this point, just because of his pure mobility and their lack of hard CC. Like I was saying, Shadow Shaman is pretty much their hard CC, and he's actually trying to put more points into Shackle over Hex, and I just don't agree with that, just because of how easily, like I was saying before, he could get interrupted. And now that he has this Blink Dagger, you know, there's not much stopping him from doing what he wants in those team fights. You saw him initiate there. And he didn't get the kill, but still, he could just he could do whatever he pleased. So I'm gonna go back over here. Spectre now, who is still saving for, I believe he's gonna go Radiant. I mean, so common build and Spectre. As I began, Vanguard, of course, the most popular first item. You know, Spectre compared to other carries really benefits from tankiness, from health, you know, armor, that kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, this pretty little move here called Dispersion is what makes him such a strong carry into the late game. So basically, Spectre reflects up to 22% of the damage she receives back in an AoE around her. So just soak that in a little bit. Basically, and that was actually a really good Kuga ult there. And you'll see her use her ultimate to come in here and try to begin fighting. But at the end of the day, the longer she can stay in a fight and take that damage for her team, the more she's going to end up doing in an AoE and really just be a pain in the butt. And when she gets in that really strong point, like if she can get her heart up, for example, heart to harass, then you know, she's really hard to kill. And you know, at that point, most teams just will say, "Forget it. Don't even try to focus her down, because then we're just going to end up killing ourselves attacking her." And, you know, that's not worth it, of course. But if you don't go for that Spectre, even if she has even if she doesn't really build damage items, she still does a lot. she hits for decent. She has an agility after all, so she's going to be attacking pretty decently fast. And she does so much damage. And then so I'll go back to the build. Like I said, she has that Vanguard first item, and then depending on farm, and I want to say that a lot. Build for the game, depending on how you're farming, what lane you're in, that kind of thing. It's 25 minutes in, so Radiance will still be effective, and it's also, I want to point out, it's also a great counter to heroes that have a Blink Dagger. The reason being, if you're taking that Radiance damage, like you're chasing down, let's say, Tiny, normally if you don't have a Radiance, he'll eventually wait till that comes off cooldown, just blink away. Okay, you didn't win, you couldn't kill him. However, if you're just in range for that Radiance burn, then it'll just keep resetting the cooldown on the Blink Dagger, and he'll never be able to get out unless, of course, a teammate helps or something. So, it's a really good counter, not to say counter, but it does help against heroes that have that Blink Dagger to keep them from trying to be so mobile in team fights. Of course, Anti-Mage will still do what he pleases. He decided to go Skull Basher, and then, of course, pick up that Aegis from Roshan. So, he's just pretty much an annoying force. Actually, really good setup here. Really good bow. You're going to see a lot of damage coming out. Those Kunkka ultimates, I haven't even touched on him yet, but those are very challenging to hit. So, the fact that he's hit two pretty successful ones already is, I give him a good applause there. So let's go to Kunkka, since I haven't touched on him. This game actually might be over sooner than we'd like it to be. Wow, his build. Okay, I'll touch on that too. So essentially, I think I prefer Kunkka the most solo middle. The reason being, he really does benefit from levels due to this Tidebringer ability. So at the end of what it does, it's a huge cleave. It'll hit basically a whole creep wave, including the range creeps. And obviously you can see the radius there. It grows bigger as he levels it up. So basically it hits all these creeps, or people in that area, that conal AoE, and adds bonus damage, and the cooldown gets reduced every time you level it up. So at the last rank, it's down to a 4-second cooldown, which is basically every 3 attacks for Kunkka, depending on, I guess, how much attack speed you've built in game. But that is incredibly powerful. It adds 60 bonus damage to that hit, and it's 4-second cooldown. So you can just go in there and cleave the whole team if you get the right positioning. And it's going to be really nice. He chose not to. He chose to max out Torrent first. Torrent is the second move I like to max out. The general build you'll see on Kunkka's is you max out the Tidebringer and then putting points into Torrent after that, and then of course Ghost Ship. Generally you'll get it at level 6, not always, depending I guess how involved you are in team fights and whatnot. But then after you max out Torrent, you at least get 2 points next marks the spot to make it a long enough delay to set up your Torrent. So the reason being for that is Torrent is a 1.53 stun, but the delay is 1.6 seconds. So in order for you to time that combination, which, Kunkka's pretty challenging here to play in that sense. If you want to maximize how much damage you can do, it's all about the combinations. So what you'll do is you'll X marks the spot and immediately torrent that X, and then you'll force them to go back to that spot, and then they'll get CC'd, and if you're even good enough, you would have sent a Ghost Ship in there too. This game's obviously over. So obviously the Radiant did a very good job. They farmed up well. Those Viper ganks really did a lot of damage early and was able to keep that Anti-Mage just growing stronger and stronger. And it's the kind of thing with these, it could have happened. Spectre, if he was in that boat, he would have done the same kind of damage. Any hard carry that gets the farm he did, 147, obviously the top in the game, along with 11 hero kills. Give that to any hard carry. He's going to win the game for them. So, they did a phenomenal job there. Not a super long game, only 30 minutes. But, good job to the Radiant there. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. This is just my first Brocast Breakdown. We're gonna try to bring you more here. Maybe I'll be able to do some with my co-caster BDLM. Also give us some feedback. Let us know how you thought this went. Anything you maybe suggestions. Also, maybe if you prefer me or prefer us to just focus on one champion or a role instead. Like I said, just give us feedback. Let us know what you're thinking, and we'll go from there. But like I said, thanks for tuning in to Brocast, and keep watching.